stuff, NBA Finals, and good old best friends, Jimbo and Saban back together again. All that and more, that's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove Podcast.
From Belly Up Sports and the Belly Up Podcast Network, you're listening to the Sports Stove Podcast with your host, Vince Stover.
Hey, good looking, what you got cooking? How's about cooking something up with me?
Hello and welcome to an all-new edition of the Sports Stove Podcast, presented by In the Clutch, official licensed apparel for Major League Baseball, NBA, hockey, all kinds of other things, some great retro things as well. Go to intheclutch.com, use the code SPORTSSTOVE, and you get 10% off your purchase. Speaking of clutch, Dad's back with me again. Hey, Dad, how you doing?
Good, doing good. Looking forward to this podcast.
Yeah, it's one of those slow weeks to some degree when it comes to sports news and things like that, although the NBA Finals are starting up Thursday evening. And there's golf going on. Actually, as we're recording this, the match is happening. You said you tuned into a little bit of that before we started recording. Rodgers and Brady going up against Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. There's been a little trash talk leading up to the event. Was it entertaining at all when you tuned in?
Yes, again, I wasn't able to tune in very long, but it looked to me like it was. They were, playing fairly good golf, and of course, again, you got Charles Barkley keeping everybody entertained too, and their announcers, and there was quite a bit of that I could see. So
this is off of what we've talked about pre-show, but Charles Barkley might be the best former athlete on television with his commentary and the antics that he has. Would you agree with that? Have you heard someone else that you really like?
No, I mean, he definitely, has become popular. He does well. He seems to, be careful, with himself, and definitely is entertaining. So, yeah, I think as far as one of the, athletes that, is on TV, he's definitely carving out a good niche for himself.
Yeah, he has. He's done very well post-NBA career, post-political career, all those things. He's found himself a nice role there in TNT and having a good time with that. Dad, I wanted to talk a little golf today because a lot more has come out about the Live Golf Tour, and they announced their first set of players was announced finally this week. 42 players on the list that were given, and Dustin Johnson, the biggest of those names, and he said, hey, I had to do what was best for my family. He said, I appreciate the PGA. I've not had any issues with the PGA, but this was what was right for me. So Dustin Johnson, Martin Keimer over there, Sergio Garcia, Louis Oosthuizen, Graham McDowell on there as well, several other people that are going. And the PGA has said, there will be consequences for any PGA Tour player who plays there, fines, suspensions, possible bans. I even heard one person say possible lifetime bans. I think that would be a little much. I don't know what the contracts look like if they have them. Of course, they're members of the PGA, so there are some guidelines and stipulations. But I want to start there with the PGA side of things. How do you feel about the PGA? It shouldn't be a surprise that they're not happy that their players are going to go help another tour make money. But how do you feel? How much do you side with them versus think that they're overreacting or so on and so forth?
Well, I think, again, they're an organization that really hasn't had any competition. And most of the time, competition is good. It makes both sides better. And I think in this case, it can help golf and potentially help the PGA. But I don't know how, flexible they can be. Obviously, they're taking the stance rather than saying, okay, we'll compete with these guys. We have a better product. We can be, this will be better. People would rather watch us. People would rather attend our events. Rather than doing that, they're just trying to squish the competition. eliminate the competition and not have that. Again, you would think they're talking behind the scenes with a game plan of where they can go forward. But I would think this new league will be like a lot of things. They'll bring some new elements anytime there's a new league in there. From what I understand, this will be team competition.
Right.
And the question is, will this be more enjoyable to watch? Will people enjoy this? I would guess, like I said, right now there's only a couple big names, but I would guess there's a host, not about a host, but I would think several that are right now still in the PGA that are looking at this. How does this go? How is this going to work? Is this really going to be a good thing, from there? I think there's potential for more to come. I think it'll be what kind of product the new league can put out as far as fans following it and people, following it from that concern. So, it'll be interesting. I don't know that the PGA will be able to just, fight it and kill it, because one thing that always happens, a lot of new leagues haven't made it because of finances. And from what I understand, this new league, that's probably not going to be a problem, or at least early on. And so I don't know if a competition is bad. I know we've talked about the Saudi Arabia thing, and there is definite problems with that. But as far as the PGA getting competition, improving some things, I mean, they're staunched in tradition, and this is what everybody likes. But if you look at other professional sports, even, they were all staunched in tradition, but they've all made, a lot of them have made changes, and for the better. And a lot of it was viewership. NASCAR, old line NASCAR people don't like the way it is now, but obviously it's worked to some extent, made it more interesting for the casual fans to watch. Old line hockey fans, they don't like shootouts and 3-on-3 overtimes. But the average fan that doesn't want to stay up all night, three nights a week, thinks that's a good thing. So, and you can look at a lot of sports that have made changes. So it probably won't hurt the PGA to make a change, but it's going to be a tough battle the way it looks to start out with.
Yeah, when you start a league, you have to be creative. You can't just mimic another league and expect to be better than them. And when you mentioned it, I think what they're doing with the team aspect of it, and individuals still can earn money for themselves, but the team aspect of it, I think the entertainment value will be much higher. I think it's going to be a more casual experience. I think that watching it will be more enjoyable because of that aspect. It'll be entertaining. I think the PGA ultimately is probably going to be better golf, at least at the beginning. Maybe you get a guy in the Live Tour that just kind of is better than everybody. Maybe that's Dustin Johnson, where he just comes out and he's just better than everybody. Versus the PGA, where we've seen a lot of parity in PGA in the recent years, really since Tiger fell off the map from a golf perspective, golf talent perspective. So I think, the PGA is still going to be the better golf, but I think the Live Tour can make a dent in things. I kind of look at it as the Manning cast this year on Monday Night Football. I see that as being just entertaining. Maybe not the old golf heads will love it, but it might draw in people who wouldn't be watching golf otherwise, depending on how they do it and how they broadcast it, how they do with broadcasting, because the broadcast of it is as important as the play. You got to have a good broadcast, good announcers, good coverage, good angles, all that kind of stuff. It's all important. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how all that shakes out. I was surprised about Dustin Johnson, Dad, jumping over. Sergio was not a surprise. Really, none of those other guys are big surprises. But Dustin Johnson, he's a legit PGA champion threat. And him making that, and obviously it's the money, right? He's going to make more money through the Live Tour than PGA. I was surprised by that. Are you surprised by Dustin Johnson, or were you surprised maybe that there weren't other bigger names included in that list?
I'm probably surprised there wasn't more names. Again, I think a lot of people are watching and to see. And again, the PGA is going to put a lot of pressure on. And so, I think everybody had to weigh that. From that standpoint, again, there's a lot of golf talent out there. So in the Live Tour, there may be some young guys nobody knows anything about right now. It only takes one or two to really come on, and get people interested. So, I thought there might be more jumping. Maybe they will quickly. You never know.
Mark Schlabach has reported that Dustin Johnson and Graham McDowell has lost a sponsor, RBC, Royal Bank of Canada, with the announcement that they are going into that Live Tour. RBC terminated their sponsorship with both players. So be sure to see kind of how that plays into, right? Sponsorship situations. If you're sponsoring a PGA Tour guy and you're thinking, I don't know, it could be because it's a Saudi back thing. It could be because the viewership's not going to be the same, all that kind of stuff. But those kinds of things are going to play a role in all this too. And maybe if golfers start losing sponsors, unless they gain some new ones very quickly, they might discourage more PGA players from jumping ship and headed over there as well. Lifetime ban. Again, I had not seen this specifically from the PGA yet. They've talked about bans. I mean, that's a little crazy, don't you think? A lifetime ban? Really, there are a few reasons for any organization to give lifetime bans to people, in my opinion. We've seen it in baseball with Pete Rose. And now there's some talk about the PGA possibly saying, hey, if you go play for this Live Tour, you're never allowed to play in the PGA again.
Yes, and I heard some talk today saying, would that really be best for the PGA, having people that they're not going to allow to come back? Will they be really hurting themselves to do that? So I think they'll think long and hard. I think the sponsorship thing is probably one of the first tools they're going to use from there. But again, there may be, the Live Tour may get sponsors to, get involved there and pick people up. But I think the PGA will do the lifetime ban as a last resort, because that probably, that might not help them at all. And I don't know if the other players would really be for that or not either.
Yeah, you would think not, but everybody likes control though. And if that's the way they can control it, then maybe they will. I don't like that. Let's talk about any other comments on the golf stuff.
No, I think it'll be interesting to see what happens, and see these first event or two, and see where it goes.
SEC meetings, best friends again. Jimbo and Saban, they put their spat behind them. The Saban did. He said the right stuff last week. He said, I should have never mentioned any school specifically. And I think he legitimately made a mistake. I know some people said, oh, Saban never makes a mistake. I think he was kind of lost in where he was and said some things that he truly believes. But I think after he said them, he realized that was probably pretty stupid of me. But anyways, it looks like Jimbo and Saban are best friends again. Yes,
that's very, very interesting how that has worked out. The question I have, and I'd love to get your opinion on it, is, did they realize this really? Well, one, did Saban realize, hey, I was wrong and I shouldn't have done that? Did they both realize, hey, this isn't good for us, for our schools, this isn't how we want to be? Or does the SEC commissioner really have power, and he was able to set these guys down and say, listen, we're not going to have this. And, oh, by the way, Lane Kiffin, you be quiet, and we're going to have a good conference here, and we're not going to have it be overshadowed by this. Do you think the commissioner had the power and really was able to control this, or do you think it's a matter of, Saban and Jimbo deciding, well, this isn't best?
Could be a little bit of both. I guarantee the SEC made an effort to shut everybody up. There's no doubt about that. Now, do they go to Saban and Jimbo? I doubt it. They probably went to the school presidents and said, you need to get these guys under control, get them to shut their mouths. You're not going to get Lane Kiffin to be quiet. So you got to be careful. You tell him to be quiet, he's probably going to be louder. So you got to be smart with that. That's why I don't think they went directly to the coaches. I guarantee the SEC said, guys, that's enough. We're not talking about that anymore. I also think that Jimbo and Saban, they have enough history together to be able to have a conversation. And I think Saban, I would be shocked if Saban didn't say, Jimbo, I was wrong. I shouldn't have said it. And, on from there we go. And I think Jimbo, he's not going to forget about it. But I think he's smart enough to say us arguing with Alabama when Alabama's better than us is probably not the best move for A&M, especially when they play this season. I think they opened as like a 15 or 16-point underdog. I think Jimbo's smart enough to realize I'm giving them all the material they need to come out and just absolutely whoop us. So I need to be quiet. We need to squash this and be done with it, and start getting the attention on something else that's a little bit more positive than this for the program, because you want recruits, you want things to happen, and money talks. But I think ultimately Jimbo knew he was setting himself up for failure, and I think Saban knew. He called out two guys, especially Deion Sanders and the HBCU. I mean, there's so much that just he should have never said. And I think they've all understood it wasn't good, and they had to make it better. And I think they're trying to do that right now. Are they best friends again? No. Is Jimbo ever going to forget it? No. But and is Saban going to forget what Jimbo said about, open up his closet? No, he's not going to forget that either. But I think Saban knows they can beat him on the field, and Jimbo has to put all of his eggs into that basket too, where he's got to say, now we have to come out and beat Alabama because I've talked too much as it is. Because with players, the coaches tell the players be quiet because you're motivating them more than they already are. I would assume that would be my thought, Dad, when it comes to the side of Jimbo and Saban. But yeah, you're right. The SEC had to have said, hey guys, shut it. Had to have, right?
Yes, yeah, I would think so, and that's interesting that conference is set up so well that that can be done. I mean, to me, that's significant that you have a commissioner. And yes, he probably talked to the school presidents, but I mean, I've heard several people say, the SEC is more powerful than the NCAA, and that to me that was an interesting thing about it, that the SEC could kind of get that under control. Like you said, though, mistakes were made. I heard today, and I don't know for sure if this is fact, but that meeting where Saban made those statements, that media were allowed in for like the first 10 or 15 minutes, and that was the only part the media really was supposed to be there. And why he should have been more aware, I heard today that the thinking probably was that the media was gone at that point.
Ah, interesting. Back to the SEC power, I think the SEC has done a really good job working with the universities, as opposed to trying to control the universities. And in doing so, they've been able to build a relationship that works for everybody. And the SEC does a good job of making money and helping each other and those kinds of things. Because you go back to the COVID situation, remember the Big Ten jumped out and said, we're not going to play all this kind of stuff. And the coaches were like, we should be playing. They didn't start on time. The other universities came out, the other conferences, a couple of them came out, Big 12, SEC, ACC, if I remember correct, all came out and said, we're going to play. And then finally, the Big 10, Pac-12 jumped back on board. But I think that's, again, a sign of leadership. The SEC is set up to succeed better than most, especially football conferences. SEC is set up to succeed in ways you can't even imagine. And so, yeah, I think there's a good relationship, a generally good relationship with the SEC and its schools, whereas I think some of the other conferences have a disconnect a little bit there as well. So, but you're talking about Nick Saban too, right? I mean, you're talking about possibly the greatest college football coach of all time, definitely in the top tier. And he can flex his muscle if he wants to, but I think he's smart enough to know what's best for his school right now. And again, he's not too worried because he's got a stacked team as well. So I think he's still pretty confident about what his team can do moving forward as well. Any other SEC notes?
No, I don't think so. And part of this whole thing was, we've talked a lot about it, but the, NIL, they've got to get control over this. And hopefully maybe some of this discussion and some of this going on will help hasten that. Because if not, it's going to get out of hand. What already is out of hand.
Yeah, I don't think you can get control of it. I think it's out of control until something major changes, whether it be leaving the NCAA, forming their own stuff, changing things around. I mean, I think it's gone. I think you've lost it at this point. They let the genie out of the bottle, and he's not going back. So they're in trouble when it comes to that kind of stuff. It's going to get back to where it always has been. Everybody's cheating, and no one's getting in trouble. And then one day somebody will get in trouble, but only one person. Everybody else will still get off the hook. Yeah, I mean, that's just the way this world works, especially in the sports world. I mean, you go back to the Houston Astros cheating. No players got punished for it. The managers did. The general manager did. 2 other teams caught cheating. Nothing really happened to them. So, I mean, again, that's what it's going to be. The NIL is just going to be a cesspool, and I don't think there's any way to control it moving forward. Okay, let's take a quick break, Dad. We're going to have a commercial, and then we'll come back. We're going to talk about fantasy football commissioners. I am one, and I get a lot of flack from a certain other person on this episode. We're going to take a quick break to hear about In the Clutch, and then we'll come back and talk about that. InTheClutch.com, the newest sponsors of the Sports Stove podcast, and we are excited to partner with InTheClutch.com. They have officially licensed apparel and accessories for your favorite sports teams and athletes. Use code SPORTSSTOVE and get 10% off your first purchase. You can find shirts like I Still Own You from Green Bay Packers. Are we talking about practice? All kinds of great shirts in baseball, football, hockey, and basketball. Officially licensed apparel from InTheClutch.com. Again, use the code SPORTSSTOVE to get 10% off your purchase. Welcome back into the Sports Stove podcast presented by In the Clutch. I also want to tell you about Elementor. Elementor is a website company that can help you build, create, manage, and host your website. We've got a link for Elementor in the episode notes, both on YouTube and the podcast platforms. Elementor, the ultimate WordPress website builder, live drag and drop editor that you can build and customize every part of your website, and 0 coding required. Dad, do you know what coding is for websites?
No, not necessarily.
Yeah, I don't either. And I read a whole book on it trying to build a website, failed miserably. But you don't have to code with Elementor. They're an all-inclusive solution for your website. Create, manage, and host your website through Elementor. Use the exclusive Sports Stove link in the episode notes on YouTube and any podcast platform. That way they know we sent you, and you can get help with your website, and you can help us by clicking on that link as well. All right. Fantasy football. We love fantasy football. We've been doing fantasy football for ages now. Dad, you got me into a league. I feel like I was 11 or 12, but I don't remember how old I was when I got into that league. But it was all done on paper, and one guy printed off the stats every week and left them for everybody, and you could see who won. And he had to do a lot of work to do all that kind of stuff. Now we have transformed into the great day and age of solid internet, and you can run all your leagues through that. I am a fantasy football commissioner for 2 leagues, a fantasy baseball commissioner for 2 leagues as well. And every year I have to put up with nonsense from players in the league. Dad, you email me around draft time every year about something. And then anytime stupid trades happen, I always hear from all kinds of people. But nonetheless, Mike Trout took a blow from Tommy Pham, saying he's the worst fantasy football commissioner ever. It's a hard job being a fantasy football commissioner. There's no love given. There's no gratitude. There's just constant complaints. This Tommy Pham, Jacques Peterson thing just continues to stick around. It blows my mind that we're talking about. I bet MLB loves that we're talking about fantasy football in the middle of their season.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. From what little I read about Trout, said, "Hey, I'm not going to talk about fantasy football." I mean, you would think baseball players would be worried about baseball season. They'd be worried about winning games, especially someone that plays for the Reds. And but instead, everybody's worried about fantasy football. It's kind of amazing that that's the discussion that's going on now. During baseball season, there'll be a time to discuss fantasy football, I would assume. And again, for the most part, from what I knew, fantasy sports have been great. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of, diversion. Helps you keep up with the games better. I didn't know. I mean, I know some people, we're not involved in any gambling or any money involved in our leagues. And I know some people are. But boy, I didn't know there were feelings like this that came out of it. So, commissioners, like you said, boy, they have a tough job. They're not appreciated, especially when they mention this is something we're going to change next year. And then that kind of doesn't happen until the day before the draft. And that is a little bit of a problem. But, but hey, those kind of things happen. Everybody's busy.
Yeah. I know for me, managing multiple leagues, I forget what I've said, what I haven't changed, or what I have changed. But, I mean, you said it. Tommy Pham, if I'm Cincinnati, I think I consider cutting Tommy Pham or trading him if I can trade him. I don't think that's helping your locker room in an already tumultuous season where, again, they're tied with Kansas City as the worst team in the league as of this recording. Actually, as of this recording, they're better than Kansas City. So they're actually not last place in the entire league anymore. But well, I can't believe this. It's crazy. Jacques Peterson was like, I didn't think about it again. It happened a year ago. I didn't think there was anything that major about it. And all of a sudden, Tommy Pham comes out and slaps him. So I mean, it's nuts. But it shows you the passion behind fantasy sports. And you're right, Dad. Fantasy sports helps you stay up to date. Football, I'd probably pay attention anyhow. Baseball, it really drew me back into baseball many years ago, and of course now I'm on a fantasy baseball show. So I mean, I definitely keep up with it a lot more as well. And speaking of baseball, a couple of teams that have come back down to normal, Dad. I talked about it briefly on yesterday's episode. The Los Angeles Angels, they started off really well. We talked about them early in the year. Are they for real? Are they finally going to fulfill, kind of what they were supposed to do? They've got these superstars on the team. Well, the Angels have kind of fallen back to earth. They've lost 6 straight games. They're 27-23 as of this recording, and they are in second place and have been behind Houston now for several games. I mean, how disappointing are the Angels, and are they the most disappointing team so far this season?
I don't know if they're the most disappointing team. I think we were a little surprised, that they were doing as well as they were. So depending on, how things end up, I wouldn't think they're the most disappointing team, for sure at this point. But, we will see. And again, Mike Trout's got all these distractions with fantasy football. So, boy, they're going to have to fight through that.
Speaking of Mike Trout, another thing I said in the last episode was Juan Soto is becoming the next Mike Trout. Phenomenal player, one of the best in the league, but on a team that just can't win baseball games. I mean, he's young. He's still got a lot of road ahead of him, Juan Soto does. But at some point, they got to do something in Washington to make that team respectable again, right?
Yes. Yeah, and you would think, you have a player like that or even a player like Trout that, boy, you would work and get people around them. I guess part of it, baseball, I don't keep up with the farm systems, but, you'd like to think maybe those teams could bring people up or trade for prospects. They're going to have some good people coming up in the future. Yeah, it's kind of sad you got players that good, and yet, they're on teams that aren't going to, that aren't competitive.
Seattle might be the most disappointing team so far this year because there was high expectations there. They brought in some guys in the offseason. supposedly got better. They were so close to making the playoffs last year. They currently sit at 21-28, and they have lost 6 of their last 10 games. Seattle is below the Texas Rangers, and I have to admit, I didn't see that happening ever in this season. The Rangers, I thought they could be better. They did a lot in free agency this year, but Seattle's supposed to be a playoff team, and they're not looking like it right now.
Yes, no, I think they would definitely be one of the bigger disappointments. A couple others, you talked about this on your show too, would be the NL East. I think, the Braves are underachieving, and the Phillies have really underachieved for where it looked like they would be. And the White Sox have been disappointing, even though it looks like maybe they're going to get back, in it to some extent there.
Yeah, you're right. The NL East is abysmal. Atlanta is in second place. They're 10.5 behind the Mets. The Mets, the only team over 500 in that division. White Sox are 5 games back, and they're below 500 right now as well. They're close. They're 23-24. So, yeah, they're disappointing too, but I think they have an easier chance to catch up. And you said Philadelphia. I mean, they're calling for firings. They're calling for changes. And they've got a loaded roster, or at least they should have one offensively. And their run differential, by the way, is 0. They've scored 224 runs. They've given up 224 runs. They've lost their last 5 games and 7 of their last 10 games. So, yeah, they are struggling, to say the least, there in Philly. I thought about having Dan D'Amico. He's a Philly fan. He's on the fantasy baseball show sometimes. He's the head of the baseball department at Belly Up Sports. And we might get him on to talk some Philly stuff here eventually as well from there. Baseball continues to roll on, though, and we'll continue to see a lot of injuries, a lot of things happening there. So we'll see how that continues to shake out. Should have some guys coming back from injury soon as well. Dad, we can't finish the episode without talking about your Boston Celtics. You're diehard. You bleed green. You wear your lucky four-leaf clover everywhere you go. Are you going to watch any of the NBA Finals?
Yes. Oh, yeah. It looks like I'm going to try to watch all of them here. I paid attention, to the Celtics once the playoffs started. And, I paid attention during the year. I got a hold of you and said, hey, I'm looking at the scores here, and aren't they winning a lot of games? I try to keep up with that. I know you criticized me some, but honestly, in all of your life, have you ever heard me talk about another NBA team that was my team?
No, that's fair.
It's always been the Celtics. So anyhow, and this is a good year to be a Celtic fan. So, but they played well. I think there'll be some fans for them. I know Golden State, definitely could dominate it, but I would think this easily could go 7 games and should be a playoffs that fans will really enjoy watching.
Yeah, I've never questioned your loyalty to Boston. I've just questioned whether or not you knew any players on the roster for several years, but nonetheless, because I'm trying to remember when I was a kid and started getting into basketball, it was a little bit later, I guess. Eric Montross, Dana Barros, those kinds of guys were on the team. I don't even remember. The only reason I knew them was from NBA Live, the video game. But they're a good team. They got an interesting squad of guys, and they're a good organization overall. And I like the young guys. I like Tatum and Brown as well. I think that the Warriors are just a better team, but Boston's earned their way here. And like I said with Parker in the last episode, it wasn't that long ago where Tatum and Brown carried the Celtics, and it looked like maybe they were going to be, in this situation regularly. They've had some down years, injury issues, things like that. But they are there this year. They play game 1 Thursday evening, and then game 2 Sunday evening, or during the day at some point. So There you go. NBA Finals. I said Warriors in 5. Parker said Warriors in 7. Do you have a prediction for the Warriors and Celtics NBA Finals?
Celtics in 7.
Celtics in 7. It'd be a fun time in Boston. That poor cities, they haven't won a championship in quite some time in any sports. So after 2 decades of Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, they've been a couple years without a title. I'm trying to remember. I'm sure I'm missing somebody. I don't think the Bruins have won recently, have they?
Not in the last couple of years. No, the Bruins have been good recently, but no, that would be true. And the Red Sox have not been there lately either. So, but very passionate fans in Boston, and really on all those teams they support very, very strongly. But definitely the Celtics from there. So, and that'll be fun times. Like I said, I think I mentioned maybe a couple episodes ago, but I remember, it used to always be Memorial Day. I always thought, boy, you're going to watch the Celtics and the Lakers play. And but now we got the Celtics back in the series here. And of course, now they're in a building with air conditioning. There was all kinds of stories back in the old Boston Garden, the visiting locker room. Of course, no air conditioning in the building, visiting locker room, no fan, one window up near the ceiling, and that window was locked because the janitor could never find the key. And it was always exciting there at the Boston Garden.
Oh, the good old days. Can't have that anymore. You got to treat everybody nicely, but fun times. Any other comments? I think I've hit everything that I need to hit on today. Anything else that we need to bring up?
No, I think that's it. We were able to hit on all the good points there. And like I said, we're just glad to see in the SEC everybody's getting along again.
That's right. That's right. So here's the new schedule for the Sports Stove. We're going to be live on YouTube during our recordings. So we'll be live on YouTube on Sundays, on Tuesday nights, and Wednesday nights. The audio will be available for you Monday morning, Wednesday morning, Thursday morning, and we'll still be on Belly Up TV every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 7 a.m. and 2 p.m. for the replay there. So you'll still catch all 3 episodes each week. Here we're working on getting several guests on here throughout the month of June as well. Typically we do local hour on Wednesdays. We're off of the local hour for June. We're back in on that in July. There. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Sports Stove. Feel free to comment. We're posting out some polls throughout these weeks as well for you to get involved in. Go to intheclutch.com. Use the code Sports Stove as you're purchasing your T-shirts. You get 10% off your first purchase. And don't forget about the link for Elementor in the episode notes on YouTube and all podcast platforms as well. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's Sports Stove podcast. And until next time, we'll see you around the Sports Stove.